Hello everyone, and welcome back to coverage of Grand Prix Paris for the MSEM format. I'm Caillou, and today we're going to be watching the round 4 match between Reuben, who's playing Bant Flash, the deck which he took to the finals of the last GP, and actually won, as you can see by this champion promo over here. He's playing against Dravos Argentium, and they're on essentially blue-black control with a grave theme, as you can see from this Bitter Duckling, and the Dead Man's Party, both of which are key engine pieces for this deck. Right now, Dravos has some good interaction in the form of Unraveling and Twilight Ambush, and getting that interaction under whatever Reuben can bring to bear is likely to be quite effective, especially since Dravos already has a win con in play, and Reuben does not have any onboard interaction as of yet. Can flash in the Cane Dancer, but 1 toughness is not going to get past the Ducklings 3. So, notably though, Reuben's hand is far more stacked than Dravos's is. So in the long game, might actually be able to grind out, especially with this planet far, far away, drawing Reuben even more cards. And draws into another powerful piece of interaction in the Portal Fracture. Needs a 4th land to be able to really get full use out of it with the Scouts, but... And Reuben just keeps drawing interaction with this Draw Step Cursory Glance. All 3 of these counterspells looking real nice, lining up with this Cane Dancer. Really at this point the only stopgap is Reuben needs a 4th land to be able to cast Bant Command and to be able to get full value out of this Portal Fracture, but other than that, Reuben's deck is kind of just humming right now. Even if you don't get the tokens on Portal Fracture, you're fine casting any of these as interaction. Then you can stall more with Cane Dancer, and then you have Vengeful Messenger as even more interaction. So Reuben's 2 stopgaps are get that stall until you can get the 4th land, and then just win essentially by pure card advantage, and needs to have some way to kill this Bitter Duckling. Because the Bitter Duckling ends up flipping and Reuben doesn't have an answer for it, that in itself is enough card advantage to surmount what Reuben's got going on. Though Bant Command being able to bounce it is quite powerful. I don't remember how much power the flip side is a 3/3, so can't actually use the destroy mode on it. Okay, on end, Dravos is going to cycle the Unraveling. I actually think that this is in my opinion, this is not a great play. The main reason I say this is because it's Dravos' only piece of counter magic, and it's not as though the thing is it's not as though Dravos is passing up initiative by not using any of his mana, because on Dravos' turn they can just untap, swing with Bitter Duckling, mill 2 more cards, and they're essentially just relentlessly building up board advantage. Now what might happen is Dravos untaps, they attack with Bitter Duckling, Reuben flashes in Vengeful Messenger to trade, and Dravos doesn't have interaction to actually stop. Or Dravos can Twilight Ambush. But then Reuben untaps and then has all of these powerful haymakers, which Dravos has no answer to. Dead Man's Ambush can recur them, but then you're cutting off cards for your Bitter Duckling to flip, so your engines have anti-synergy. Oracle's Vision is quite good, though. That itself flips Bitter Duckling this turn. So yeah, Reuben... So it's probably going to... If Dravos decides to attack with Bitter Duckling first, then... Okay, nope, just going to run out the Oracle's Vision. Notably, this could actually backfire, potentially, depending on what Reuben hits, because it gives Reuben a free Cane Dancer target. Oh, and mills a Journey's End. Reuben very much would have wanted to draw that at some point to be able to answer the Bitter Duckling. Okay, Dravos going to play the Corpse Bed, likely exiling the Seal of Approval and Journey's End, but might have been... I know, you're supposed to, conventional Magic logic says play your tap lands first, but in this matchup where Cane Dancer is really a super real, and Reuben already has a planet far, far away on the stack, I think it would have been better to actually just play the Nereba there and then save the Corpse Bed. Oh no! If Dravos taps out for Dead Man's Party and then goes to attack with the Bitter Duckling, doesn't have the mana to Twilight Ambush to kill the Vengeful Messenger first. Oh, but it doesn't matter, because Reuben's gonna Cursory Glance to counter the Dead Man's Party. And then draws off Planet far, far away. And there's that 4th land. But now that Bitter Duckling is flipping, it's going to be hard because in that case, Dravos just if it's bounced, Dravos just plays it again next turn and reflips it. So, and yeah, there's no good situation there because Dravos again could have recurred it with the Dead Man's Party if Reuben had allowed it to stick around uncountered. Yeah, on end gets the Night Song Swan, and suddenly things are looking real bad for Reuben because Reuben now has to, on his turn, tap out for Bant Command to kill the Night Song Swan. There's no real getting around that. Otherwise, Dravos mills 7 and then just recasts a Dead Man's Party and then stuff starts getting real bad for you. And once again, Seal of Approval, which is very good if your opponent has failed to resolve a threat, not so great after that. Reuben deep in thought, but I really think the only play is Bant Command, make 2 Knights, bounce the Bitter Duckling, and then just and then hope to draw into an answer next turn, essentially. Another option is just like assume. The thing is, you can't let the Night Swan get even one trigger off because then it gets Dead Man's Party, and then if you kill the Night Song Swan, Dead Man's Party gets back the Bitter Duckling, and it's just a mess. Angel of Succor, but I think that you can do it in response to the trigger, but the trigger still resolves, right, on upkeep. I'm talking about Bant Command right there. And Reuben's just going to let the Night Song Swan trigger resolve. So mills another fat 7 cards. Also notable is that Bitter Duckling isn't legendary. Dravos just milled one. Dravos could literally just play another. And at that point is milling 14 cards a turn. And then at that point is getting really close to winning just off of the Lab Man trigger of Night Song Swan. That's actually not a bad idea. I think that's super justifiable here. I think that getting back the second Bitter Duckling is actually really justified, especially since Reuben doesn't have wipes. And double Monkey Shines means that you can also just dig faster there. And grabbing back the second Bitter Duckling. Looks like Reuben is gonna Cane Dancer Cursory Glance this. Okay, that's also a valid line. Dravos does not have the interaction in hand to be able to stop this. Okay, and Dravos just drawing more card draw plus mill. All of which is fine in a vacuum up until Reuben manages to get a removal spell for Night Song Swan is the real issue. So it looks like, Monkey Shines from Dravos, just going to keep cantripping / digging. Okay, so we're resolving a judge call right now because Dravos accidentally shuffled after looking at the top 2 cards with Monkey Shines. So a judge has been called, we're going to be working through it. I'll get back to y'all once the judge call is resolved and we can resume playing the game. Okay, so our judge Windy has made a judge call. What it's going to be is, there's no way to do a full rewind at this point, so Dravos will just draw a card. We'll have to forego the card selection that they were hoping to get. That's unfortunate, but if you make a mistake at competitive REL, that's just how it goes sometimes. So Dravos ends up drawing a card into, is that the 3rd or the 4th Monkey Shines? That is the 3rd Monkey Shines right there. Can't cast it off of the swamp. So probably just going to hold up the Twilight Ambush, or could also play Find Happiness on themselves. And then that actually might be better sequencing. Because that way you get the Leitmotif trigger off of casting the Twilight Ambush next turn, potentially. But it also does leave you tapped out, so you can't Twilight Ambush something scary. Ooh, and Reuben's just going to run out the Portal Fracture, and because Reuben has Wanderlust, is going to get both of the Scout tokens right here. So yeah, the pendulum is solidly swinging back into Reuben's favor. Okay, and at this point, Night Song Swan is still scary, but Reuben does have Portal Fracture and Vengeful Messenger as potential interaction points for it. As in, for the cards that Night Song Swan recurs, and has, a reasonable board, but then nothing that can really get past the Night Song Swan. One thing to do would be attacking with the Angel of Succor to bait Dravos into... Okay, this is a weird thing I'm about to say, but I think that one potential play is you attack with Angel of Succor in order to bait Dravos to attack with Night Song Swan, then block it with the flashed-in Vengeful Messenger. The problem is then your only interaction for whatever Dravos casts is a Portal Fracture, and then Portal Fracture isn't enough mana to actually... Oh, no, okay, we're going to see the Bant Command line that I mentioned earlier, I think. Yep, okay, Bant Command, bounce it, and then 2 knights. Yep. And that way we'll be able to swing in for 6 damage this turn, puts Dravos on a 3-turn clock. Oh, and oh my god. And the really important part about this is, Reuben's mana does untap. So Dravos might be spooked into not casting the Bitter Duckling. I don't think Reuben actually solidly has the mana to counter the Bitter Duckling because Dravos can pay for the 2 from Portal Fracture. What could happen here though is no. I was thinking maybe if Dravos runs out a Monkey Shines first, but even then no. If Dravos had one more blue source, there are ways that Dravos could mess this up by casting Icon and then Reuben lets the Icon resolve, and then Reuben counters the Bitter Duckling. But yeah, without a third blue source, Dravos is physically incapable of making those plays. I believe Dravos' deck does have mainboard Violent Collapse, which isn't out here. Of course, the issue is if Dravos draws it off the Monkey Shines and tries to cast it, then it'll get hard Portal Fractured, and that's basically just game over. Which, for those who don't know what Violent Collapse is, it's 1 black, all creatures get -3/-3 until end of turn. So essentially, our most effective anti-aggro wipe. So it looks like Dravos drew a land here. And that is a third blue source, which does give Dravos the potential to get blown out here. But it looks like tapping 2, so it's going to be casting the Bitter Duckling first. Oh no, okay, second Monkey Shines. And Dravos drawing into a Find Happiness and Misery, but again, needs an out this turn. I'm surprised Dravos left this on top with a second Monkey Shines instead of trying to dig deeper. And losing the life off the Find Happiness is actually a liability, because Reuben has... Okay, so I think the thing is here, Reuben just Portal Fractures right here, forces Dravos to pay the 2. No, okay, I think this is a misplay from Reuben, because there's no 2 mana thing which you care about countering. And then, or I guess there's the Bitter Duckling, is a thought, actually. But basically, you don't want to be left without something to counter with Portal Fracture, because what happens is, even if Dravos resolves the Bitter Duckling, if you cast Portal Fracture, you end up having, I believe, exactly lethal on board after the Find Happiness, assuming that you play Portal Fracture, get the 2 tokens, and then pump up Monument Queens for 1 next turn. And now, yeah, the Bitter Duckling comes. I think, so Reuben... It can now Portal Fracture the Bitter Duckling. So Dravos could have stopped this by playing the Bitter Duckling earlier, instead of waiting all the way till the end of the sequence. Or even, yeah. Dravos resolves the Find Happiness, but is now at 10 life. So I think is just dead on board, with or without the Monument of Queens. Yeah, actually is more than dead on board. Because that's 12 damage on board right now. So yeah, that's just game. So phew. Game 1 goes to Reuben after what is a tight sequence. Dravos having the resolve Bitter Duckling was a tense situation for Reuben, but Reuben kind of just drew exactly as many lands as he needed. His deck stopped there and just kept giving him gas. And that's kind of the perfect formula. That plus an opponent slightly misplaying is the perfect formula for a game 1 from behind. Okay, looking at sideboarding for Dravos, looks like the Violent Collapse, I actually thought there was Violent Collapse as main, because lots of blue-black control decks have Violent Collapse as main, but it looks like Dravos just doesn't, and Twilight Ambush is the anti-aggro hedge. Out of the side, I think that Memento Mori is really strong here as both a kill your creature, it's also really good as a counter target Cane Dancer trigger, so those are really good. Violent Collapse, obviously, I think is an easy come-in. Afterlife Takes Its Due is also fine as a wipe, so I could see some number of these grindy value pieces. I think that there's way too many cantrips right now and not enough actual action, and I think Dravos has to change that out of the board. Meanwhile, for Reuben, I think that versus Control, Nocturnal's Informant is kind of backbreaking. Same for Sporeflow Protector. So I think... Oh, also still the Pandemonium. So I think that still Sporeflow, Nocturnal's Informant, and some number are pretty easy candidates for coming in. Nocturnals, because if they don't have creatures, it's just a card draw engine. Spore Flow because it's a single cheap creature which generates you insane value, and still the Pandemonium because it's Negate Plus, which obviously versus control decks is just insane. But yeah, let's take a look at how Game 2 is shaping up to start off. No obvious bring-ins on Dravos' side. Meanwhile, it looks like Reuben did bring in the Nocturnal's Informant. Disseminate staying in is a little interesting, but it can answer a duck on curve. Also can answer a flipped icon, potentially. Turn 2, Dravos is going to run out the Find Happiness in Misery, just going to put that up as a card draw. Doesn't have anything to trigger the lay motif on it, okay, and draws a land. I think that next turn Dravos, if Dravos taps out for the icon, next turn Dravos gets super punished, so should just keep up the cursory glances, because that lets you counter the Nocturnal's Informant pretty cleanly. Obviously Dravos doesn't know that Reuben has specifically Nocturnal's Informant, but I think that in general, Dravos should just keep up the interaction, and then, again, because you have, if you just draw one more land and play on curve, you will get to a point where you can play Icon's Portal while also still keeping up a cursory glance. Hell, you can even get to the point where if you want, you can keep up 2 cursory glances, one to counter their interaction and one to counter whatever proactive play they make. So yeah, I hope Dravos doesn't run out the icons directly next turn. Also, Reuben drawing a timely turn 2 play after not having anything below 3 that's relevant. So the Planet will be able to get Reuben started on that card draw train. And yeah, Planet is one of the strongest engines for these types of decks. Oh no, and Dravos is tapping out for the icon. And the reason that this is bad is because now Reuben gets to, Reuben doesn't actually have a second blue land, I just realized. So Reuben needs to draw a second blue land off the Planet plus draw step, but if Reuben does, then Reuben can resolve the Nocturnal's Informant, and that's just brutal. Because then, Reuben might wait until Dravos' end step, or next end step, at which point Dravos could cursory glance it, but I think that doing it when Dravos is tapped out makes a lot more sense. Okay, on end, Reuben gonna run out the Planet far, far away. Draws another Angel of Sucor, kinda not what you want to see in this situation. Sedate Tundra is literally exactly what you want to see, though. A 4th land plus a second blue source for both your Vengeful Messenger and Nocturnal's Informant? Yes, please. Is gonna pass without tapping out for the Nocturnal's Informant, which I guess makes sense if you're scared of removal. But this will let Dravos counter it if Reuben attempts to play it on end. I guess Dravos could tap out to the point where they don't have access to it, but it would take a little bit more. And also, I'm surprised that Dravos... I don't get the logic behind Dravos' Icon's Portal pick, because Dravos picked Oracle's Vision, which is just a cantrip, over Twilight Ambush, Memento Mori, and Violent Collapse, all 3 of which are really good interaction pieces in this matchup. So I'm really questioning the logic behind Oracle's Vision, especially since both Memento Mori and Twilight Ambush also trigger Find Happiness in Misery anyways. So I think that, Dravos is playing this a little bit too tap-outy, which, the deck, obviously, there are turns when you need to tap out, but I feel like Dravos is playing it a little bit too tap-outy and neglecting the interaction portion of their deck, and that's going to come back to bite Dravos. Okay, hits a second Icon's Portal. It is legendary, so we'll have to sack the other one if Dravos wants to play it. Also an issue is that doesn't, Onzen, the issue I was about to say is actually mitigated by Onzen. So Onzen will let Dravos flip this next turn if Dravos so wishes. Because Onzen essentially, fealty is how many lands of that basic land type you control, and Onzen is essentially an Urborg for island, so it'll turn the Nereba itself and the swamp into islands that can be used to flip the Icon's Portal. And Dravos is going to try and run out the Dead Man's Party. Reuben is going to let this resolve, but the important part right here is that Reuben can now get the Nocturnal's Informant under counter magic. Yep, Nocturnal's Informant coming down, Planet far, far away triggers to draw. Now, looking at Dravos' graveyard, can next turn recur any one of these cards with Deadman's Party unless Reuben draws into a Journey's End, essentially. Which Reuben keeps drawing into creature removal, which isn't super great right now. So I think the play is attack with Nocturnal's Informant first, yeah. Okay. Reuben draws into another planet, and then main 2 you just play an Angel of Sucor, and then just run away with it. Worrying is that Reuben doesn't have other stack interaction, so Dravos can just pick back up a Deadman's Party, pick back up the Violent Collapse of Deadman's Party and 2-for-1 Reuben. It's not the end of the world for Reuben, but it is definitely a back-breaking play. Notably, if Dravos recurs the Violent Collapse and plays it before playing the 5th land, Reuben can counter it with Vengeful Messenger. Okay, so it looks like Dravos recurred the Bitter Duckling. Oh, but naturally draws the Afterlife Takes Its Due. Doesn't have third black source for it, though, which is a bit of an issue. And also, that gets hard countered by the Vengeful Messenger regardless. Is Dravos going to try and flip the Icon's Portal? If Dravos tries to go flip Icon Portal plus play Bitter Duckling, Reuben has a devastating play of double disseminating each of them, and then that's just game. Like, I don't see any way for Dravos to come back. Technically, Dravos does have Afterlife and Icon's Portal, but I think at that point, Reuben has just gained such an advantage. Okay, is playing the Bitter Duckling. Okay. And yeah, no. It looks like Dravos is flipping Icon's Portal. Or playing a second Icon's Portal. No, it's flipping Icon, yeah. So, now, this is about as good as it gets for Reuben. Now you just, you disseminate one, you disseminate the other, you disseminate all over. You don't even need to do that. You can Vengeful Messenger on end to be able to get to be able to get 9 damage in next turn. And then you can just double disseminate. Or actually, no, you want to disseminate here to prevent damage. No, but yeah, no, you can do one. You can disseminate the Icon, and then Vengeful Messenger on end step. You can do both. And then you untap, you disseminate the Bitter Duckling. Okay, before the end, Reuben is gonna... It looks like Dravos didn't attack with the Icon, probably keeping it up to block the Nocturnal's Informant, but unfortunately Disseminate's coming down, taking out the Bitter Duckling, and Reuben is gonna just double Disseminate, killing the other Icon. And this is why you don't tap out. I'm gonna tap 2 more, Planet Far, Far Away. I think the better way to do this would have been Disseminate plus Vengeful Messenger, but it doesn't really matter at this point. Not playing the Vengeful Messenger actually could just be trying to play around Dravos recurring a wipe. That's actually very valid. So yeah, no. My estimation of the Vengeful Messenger was not correct. And wow, 3rd copy of Angel of Sucor. Yeah, not super what is needed right now, but Reuben hits for 6. Dravos needs to recur the Violent Collapse next turn. Nocturnal's Informant drawing a Portal Fracture is actually perfect because that gives Reuben enough mana to tax out a Violent Collapse. So I think Reuben is in the clear here. I think Reuben just takes this. He's going to tap out for another Angel of Sucor just to get the draw off the planet, presumably. And a Journey's End, yeah, that's quite good. Because at this point, can counter the Violent Collapse. Actually, yeah, the Journey's End doesn't even matter because Dravos is not surviving past this turn. And yep, Dravos does recur the Violent Collapse because that is the out. And this is such a weird situation for a control deck because you're sitting at 8 cards in hand, everything looks like it's going well, and boom. Yeah, this Violent Collapse, Reuben just solidly counters it with Vengeful Messenger plus Portal Fracture. So yep, first the Portal Fracture comes out. Ooh, Dravos going to try and Cursory Glance that instead of just paying for it. Okay. Well, it kind of doesn't matter because now Reuben drops a Vengeful Messenger. Yup. And that's game. And yeah, phew, good games. Some unfortunate misplays by Dravos, but overall was quite the tense set just because both players have like these Haymaker, Value Engine win cons and a plethora of interaction to back them up. So it came down to like who could in both games it was like Dravos pulled ahead with some Value Engine early, but Reuben had like the cheap interaction to pair with some timely damage, and that just ended up overcoming Dravos' value engines before they could like properly run it out. But yeah, one thing I quickly need to check is what placing this puts Band Flash at. Okay, that puts Band Flash at a 2-2, which means unfortunately it will not be making the top cut this GP, but still a respectable showing, and I think that both of these decks seem really cool, and I like the integration of cards from new sets, like we saw Seal of Approval from Monsters of Chikyu in the Band Flash list. Obviously, Dravos' list is built around Bitter Duckling from the MS3 bonus sheet. So yeah, lots to look forward to in terms of the future of MSAM's landscape. But yeah, until then, this is Caillou signing off.